Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. Hope you're having a wonderful day so far, wherever you are. If you're learning a language, you're in the right place. What you get on this podcast, if you're new here, is ideas, motivation, tips and tricks for becoming a better language learner and enjoying it more, making more out of languages in your life. Today we've got a very interesting question from someone who is actually giving presentations in a foreign language. So they've, they're up at the more advanced end of learning. So we'll talk about that today. Now, without any further ado, let's get into today's question from Shawal.
Hello, Ollie. My name is Shawal and I'm from Malaysia. Previously, I asked you a question about how to enrich my vocabulary when I speak. And I'd like to thank you because it helps me a lot. And this time I'd like to ask kind of a different question. It's about when I want to do a presentation in my foreign language, that is English, I find it very hard to speak as good as how when I speak all by myself. I do understand that it's all because the pressure and also the anxiousness that is happening on us at that time when you are in front of a huge audience. So it's kind of a bit much more difficult to speak like you always do. But, I just want to ask for some tips and also, things that I can do as someone who wants to present in front of the class and not to, what we call is stutter too much, or should I say hard for us to express ourselves. So, yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Hi, Shawal. Thank you for the question. Great to hear from you again. Shawal left a question in episode 146 that was all about enriching vocabulary. So how do you enrich your vocabulary? That's what it says on the tin. So it's great to hear that you're doing presentations in English. I think that really is like the next step to really stepping up a level and becoming even more proficient in English. It is, giving presentations is tough. I actually think it's very similar to the task of learning to write well, because the basic problem is how well can you express yourself in formal language. What we don't want to do is get up in front of people and just chat like we do, as if we're having a conversation, because it comes across as a bit unprofessional, right? I guess it depends on the situation, if you're just talking to people in class. But, no one likes a long, rambling presentation. A bit like my podcasts. Nobody likes me to ramble for ages. You want people to get to the point and to give information in a clear, concise way. So in that respect, it's very, very similar to learning to write. Now, as you said, Joel, with public speaking, you've got two different challenges. The first challenge is actually kind of remembering what you're going to say and the structure of the presentation itself. And then the second challenge is actually the delivery of the presentation. So it's how well you speak. And this is not just a foreign language problem. Everybody who's ever given a presentation or done any public speaking will relate to the experience of getting very nervous before you stand up. And the nerves have a huge impact on your ability to remember what you're going to say and actually how coherently you say it. Because when you get nervous, you talk faster, you try to make up and disguise the nerves by talking a lot. And even in your first language, that can make things very difficult. I do quite a lot of public speaking. I have over the last year, I've given talks in Berlin, in Montreal, in Hong Kong, in Brno, in the Czech Republic, and I'm going to be doing quite a lot more probably this year. And no matter how many talks I give, I still get nervous before I get up on stage. Now the talks I give tend to be in front of a few hundred people, a lot of people there, and there's pressure. Pressure is a good thing. Nerves are a good thing. Musicians will tell you that, nerves are what, you think of it this way. You can give a very good performance without nerves, but it's only with nerves that you can give a great performance, because it's those nerves and the adrenaline that can push you to do a really fantastic job and do better than you could otherwise. But obviously that does rely on you knowing your subject matter well in the first place. So I think what I'm not going to do here, Shawal, is give you any ideas on actually learning the presentation or handling nerves, because I mean that's really a different topic. But I will talk about the foreign language element, because you want to give the presentation in English and you want to do it well. I think you've basically got two choices, and it depends how much you want to prepare and how much time you have. If you give regular presentations in front of your class, then you're not going to have that much time to prepare each one. But if you've got a big presentation coming up in the summer or whatever, then maybe you want to spend more time on it. Generally, with this kind of thing, the more time you spend, the better results you're going to get. I noticed that in my own presentations, that when I prepare well in advance and I prepare something, 3 or 4 weeks in advance, I always have a much better presentation than when I prepare the night before. So here are the two choices that I think you've got. The first choice is the more difficult one, and that is actually preparing word for word what you're going to say in certain parts of the talk. Writing monologues or speeches, memorizing them and practicing delivering them is a fantastic language learning method. It's something that I don't do it so much anymore because it takes so much time, but I've done it a lot in the past, and it's really, really cool because you learn to express yourself in different ways. You write the speech or the monologue yourself, you get a native speaker to correct it, and then you learn to deliver that speech yourself. And it's just a great way to level up and to learn to say new things. So if you've got a big speech coming up in the language, in English, then the great thing to do would actually be to memorize it word for word. The most important thing when you do this is give yourself time. All right, don't do it the night before. It's something that you might do over the course of 2 or 3 months, maybe. If you're learning a big presentation, take a lot of time over it. But if you do that, then you will never. The thing about doing this is you never forget the stuff you learn. I remember in Japan, I was doing a gig. I had a band playing bossa nova with my friend Emily and Simon, and I wanted to thank the people who came to support us, and so I learnt this short speech in Japanese because I didn't trust myself to just ad lib. I wanted to say something good, so I got my friend to write out this speech, and I memorized it, and I remember it to this day, like 5 or 6 years on, because you just pay so much attention to it, a bit like learning songs. So that's the first thing to do, and I think if you've got the time, then it will be time very well spent, because you'll just learn a bunch more really good English. The second way of approaching this is if you don't have so much time, and if you don't have time to prepare it word for word, then the next best thing is making sure at least you've got a very good command of the vocabulary of what you're going to talk about. All right, so if you're not going to prepare word for word, then you're going to have to make it up, and you're going to have to speak off the cuff, as we say. You're going to have to improvise in the English. And that's okay, but you need to make sure that when you come to actually make specific points, that you have the vocabulary that you need to accurately express those things. Right, so let's imagine that you're describing a scientific experiment. You can tell the story of how you decided to do that experiment in normal, casual English, but then when it comes time to actually describe exactly what you did in that experiment, whether it's talking about the sample size, or whether it's a kind of double randomized trial, or whatever it may be, you need to be able to say specifically what that is. And so one very useful thing you can do is to get a bit of paper and start to just map out all the different main topic areas of what you're going to talk about. And then write down and learn the vocabulary that you need for that. So I like to use mind maps, and so I would kind of start with a bubble in the middle, and I would maybe have a few different bubbles around the page that cover the main topic areas. And then out of each of those bubbles, I would brainstorm all the vocabulary that I need, maybe some phrases that I need, the key vocabulary to talk about those topics. Then you memorize that vocabulary. So you're not memorizing what you're going to say exactly, but you do make sure that you have the exact vocabulary, so that you don't be too kind of long-winded, and you don't kind of paraphrase too much. So that's how I would probably approach this problem. So it's number one, if you've got the time, memorize it word for word, because although when I give speeches in English, I never memorize it word for word. But we're talking about like a language learning opportunity here, right? So that's why I think the word for word thing is a good idea. The second approach, assuming you don't have time to memorize whole speeches, is to look at the different vocabulary areas you need and make sure you have a really solid grasp of that vocabulary, because then at least you're going to be able to talk with some degree of specificity when it comes to actually giving the talk. All right, so I hope that's helpful. It's not something I have a great deal of experience in, giving speeches in foreign languages. My friend Stujay actually gave a speech, a TED talk in Mandarin recently. I don't know if that's available. I might have a look and see if that's available. But I remember asking recently on my Facebook page, what tips do you guys have for getting over the intermediate plateau? And Stujay said, Toastmasters. Toastmasters is the international organization for giving talks in foreign languages. So, in fact, Shoal, if you have a Toastmasters locally, join them. Wow, that's an idea I didn't think of in my preparation for this, because the one thing for sure is that the one way to get better at giving talks is actually to give lots of talks. So see if you've got a local Toastmasters. I'll put a link to this and everything else in the show notes as well, so you can see that. This will be episode 192. So iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 192 for that. If you don't know what Toastmasters is, wow, you should definitely look into it. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Shoal, thank you very much for your question. If you would like to ask me a question, please go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. Now, at the end of every episode, I like to leave you a little something to chew on, and I'm going to give you a quote today, because it's been a while since we've had a quote. And this is a quote from Napoleon Hill, who said, "Strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle." Thank you very much for listening. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free. See if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.